What's cracking, ladies and gentlemen? 49 coming out another community shoutcast for the OUSA Dota League Season 2. We're loading into game number 2 of Momentum Dota up against TAGC. So Momentum Dota were able to take a very easy game, number 1, off the back of the superior team play coming out from them. As TAGC, incredibly questionable decision making coming out from them. They repeatedly made a lot of mistakes. The Small Freak on the Juggernaut repeatedly kept running forward up against 3-4 heroes and feeding and throwing his life away. So even though he had vision of those heroes, he still chose to play very far forward, caught completely out of position. T-Dubs was fell apart to the aggression coming out from the tri lane. That's just due to the fact they had the Wraith King as their farmer, so Wraith King is able to set up kills on his own. So it makes it very difficult for him to be able to find farm at all. But he should have been playing a lot more defensively after that first death. Once he realized the synergy coming out from that lineup, he should be playing a lot further back to make sure that he wasn't caught out by the Ray Fire Blast. But nonetheless, that's all water under the bridge. Game number 2, we've got a Titan ban this time coming out from the boys in TAGC. GS Donkey was able to land 3-man Ravages once he was able to pick up his Blink Dagger, and those were able to decisively win fights. If you could land Ravage on the backline heroes, the support heroes, so if you could catch out the Shadow Shaman and the Jakiro, you could kill them instantly if you have another Blink Initiator, or if you've got a hero like a Templar Assassin that does a massive amount of physical burst damage, before they could get any of their spells off. And if you could start a fight 4v5, you've already won, especially since in the early stages of the game where the backline heroes, the 2 supports, are incredibly critical in being able to turn the fight around off the back of their abilities. So the Rubik being another respect ban coming out, not too sure whether Rubik's been banned out. Rubik is a very questionable support pickup. I'd class him as C tier because you only pick up Rubik in very particular lineups if you've got a very aggressive safe lane farmer and a very aggressive support hero to synergize with the Rubik. Then the positioning power coming in from the Teleconnect lift becomes very valuable. Otherwise, Rubik is completely outclassed by a lot of our support heroes that still are in the pool, such as the Skywrath Mage and the Shadow Shaman. So we've got the Brewmaster as well as the Lycanthrope being banned out once again from Momentum Dota. So they're banning out what they don't want to play against, and that's a huge amount of team fight. Void, however, did slip through the draft this time. And so Void and Invoker heroes are still around, but while they are very powerful heroes on paper, and if executed properly, they've got a fairly high skill floor. You have to be able to execute them properly, otherwise you're more of a detriment to your team than you are a benefit. Since the Invoker, he's an incredibly greedy hero, he plays like a semi-carry. You have to have an excellent Invoker player, and you have to draft your team around the Invoker. And since in the 1v1 mid matchup, you never see Invoker mid anymore because he's such a greedy hero to send mid. Even if he goes Exort, it's incredibly difficult for him to win the lane level 1, level 2. And so if you pick up another hero such as the Razor, it's much more reliable, or the Viper, was able to decisively win 1v1 engagement and shut down the Invoker and prevent him from getting his fast randomizers if he's going for that route and get fast levels. He becomes a huge detriment to your team because if he goes past Exalt, which he's forced to these days, if he wants to compete for last hits in lane, he becomes completely useless when T-flanks come in, when all he has is a Sunstrike and a very low level Chaos Meteor. Juggernaut is the first pickup coming out from TAGC, and immediately Faceless Void Witch Doctor pickup coming out from Momentum Dota. So they've been doing their homework. The Faceless Void offlaner with the Witch Doctor Skrillex's Death Ward, massive amount of damage that comes up from that. Since if you play Faceless Void in the offlane role, which is much more common these days than in the 1 position role, as you want to pick him up to set up the rest of your heroes. So in that case, all he is a walking ultimate in the early stages of the game. The time lock does give him a lot of solo kill power as well, but as far as the drafting stage is concerned, all you really care about is the Chronosphere, and so you want to pick heroes that work well with the Chronosphere. And so Witch Doctor with the Death Ward is one of the better combos. If Witch Doctor gets an Agnum Scepter, he could kill the entire enemy team, even if you only catch out 1 or 2 with the Chronosphere, just because of the 600 bounce range on the Death Ward makes it incredibly powerful. And if you can hit all 5 heroes at the same time, with the 3 attacks per second coming up from the Death Ward, you could decisively win fights just off the back of that Death Ward. So Disruptor as a second pickup. So Disruptor is a good counter pick to the Faceless Void, since until he gets a BKB, if you don't catch the Disruptor in, and you time walk into the Chronosphere, Disruptor can just glimpse him back out, so that's wasting Faceless Void's Chronosphere, so that means that he's not dealing damage at all. Also means that if he catches out one of his teammates, you could drop the Static Storm on top of him, so that as the Chronosphere ends, his team's called out with the Connect Field Static Storm combination. Ancient Apparition being banned out, so another respect ban coming out from TAGC. They really don't want to deal with Jesus on the Goon Tech. He was able to play a very good... Or was it iPro 87? I've really forgotten. No, it was Jesus on the Goon Tech on the Rubik and iPro 87 over in the Ancient Apparition, just because of the fact that it completely shuts down all regen, and this is incredibly important, especially when you have a Juggernaut pickup. So he's a mid-game momentum-based carry, where you want to get a few points up in your healing ward, you want to have a point up in your Omni Slash, so you use your Omni Slash to get a kill on a solo hero, or you use the Bladesman. Once you get a kill, you take a tower with the healing ward, and you force the enemy team to have to react to you. So Skywrath Mage being banned out by Momentum Dota, and that's because they know that if they don't pick up the Skywrath Mage, which they could choose to pick up the Skywrath Mage, but it's a fairly greedy pickup, it's more likely the enemy team can pick up the Skywrath Mage to deny the pickup over to Momentum Dota. So if TAGC pick up the Skywrath, then he could use it to control the Void inside the Chronosphere. So every time Faceless Void doesn't chrono the Skywrath Mage can Ancient Seal him, can throw out the Concussive Shot and try to deal a lot of damage to him in the fight. And if he catches our teammate, he can Mystic Flare the teammate. You don't want to Mystic Flare the Faceless Void since he's got 1,000 movement speed, so he could just run out of it. But you could easily Mystic Flare one of his allies, as well as the fact that he's a very powerful support hero and would synergize well with the Disruptor in the sense that the Concussive Shot guarantees the kinetic field, and with the kinetic field and the constant Arcane Bolts flying, you'll be able to get 3 Arcane Bolts off if he gets out of the kinetic field. Then with Thunder Strike, there's enough damage between the two supports to go for a kill attempt. Once again, TAGC choosing to go Jakiro, even though he wasn't able to accomplish anything at all in that lineup. So they're going once again for a very push-oriented lineup. But the issue with these Deathwall push lineups is it's all about execution. If you fail to execute, if your mid player is running in and throwing his life away to the Templar Assassin, if your Doombringer is running up and getting bolted in the face by the Wraith King and brought down, then you can't execute your lineup because the enemy team, they have the golden EXP advantage, and you can't fight 5v5 when you're behind. You only fight 5v5 when you're ahead, or when you're even but you have a better fighting lineup. And so Silencer being banned out, as well as the Invoker. Invoker's still being banned out despite the fact that he's such a greedy pickup, but instead Momentum Dota go for the Tinker. So Tinker on the Radiant side is incredibly powerful, much more powerful than the Dire side, because you have easy access to the Ancients, as well as the fact that you've got easy access to your medium camp as well as your hard camp over in the jungle. So if you have your support hero, your support players constantly stacking those camps, or Tinker himself can stack the Ancient camp when he goes top to check the rune. It gives Tinker a comeback mechanic as well as a quick influx of gold. So once you have 3 full stacks on the Ancients, and Tinker's got level 6 in Soul Ring, he can just march spam it out, clear it out, pick up his Boots of Travel, and once Tinker picks up his Boots of Travels, he starts to reach that point of no return for the enemy team. And so you want to kill Tinker as many times as possible before he gets his Boots of Travels, and before he gets his Boots of Travels into Blink Dagger. And once he gets the Boots of Travels and the Blink Dagger, unless you have specific Tinker hunting heroes, so heroes that could provide flying vision, clear through trees, or can blink initiate but have a failsafe if they blink to the wrong place. So an example of that, for instance, is the Storm Spirit. Since with the Ball Lightning, he clears the retreat, provides flying vision, and once he spots out the Tinker with the, if he goes for an Orchid, he could go for a kill attempt. And since he scales so well in all stages of the game, Storm Spirit can easily hunt down the Tinker. Otherwise, you want to pick up a hero with a blink. And so Nyx Assassin being picked out, so he's going to be the offlane hero this time around, or he could go mid, but Nyx Assassin has fallen off mid just because he can go mid. Like, there's nothing wrong with the Nyx Assassin mid, he's got a lot of good stats for it. But the issue is he's not going to achieve as much as another mid hero. And for instance, Dazzle's a hero that's absolutely fantastic mid. If you look at him objectively, he's got high base damage, high range, and he can control the lane by using the Shadow Wave to clear out the Creep Wave, go for poison kills using the Poison Touch, and once he gets Weave, he gets up a lot of kills across the map. But the reason why you don't see Dazzle mid is it's a waste of a lane for him. Is just because a hero can go mid doesn't mean they have to go mid. You want to pick up a hero that can help you control tempo. And Nyx Assassin Vendetta ganking and wasting a lot of time mid, that's a free lane for Tinker to be able to farm. And so you want to pick up a hero that can maintain relevancy in the laning phase. And so it's the reason why Raze is so popular, is he can win the lane decisively off the back of Static Link. He can push out the creep wave using Plasma Field. He can go for kill attempts using the Plasma Field either on mid or in the off lane or the safe lane. But at the same time, he benefits from farm, so he can stay mid. And so Silencer and Doombringer is the last bans from Momentum Dota. And so the Silencer ban, very self-explanatory, especially with the Faceless Void. Since Faceless Void has about 0.5 cast point, when he time walks in, if your Silencer player's got quick reflexes and is aware of what's happening, he can press R, or even if you just yell at him to press R, he can silence the Faceless Void before he gets his chrono off. In which case, Faceless Void just time walk himself forward right into your face, and you can turn around and blow him up. Unless he has a BKB, in which case you're forcing him to spend 4,000 gold that he doesn't really want to. And so Jakiro also works well in this particular case if he doesn't get chronoed, because he can turn around, drop the Macro Pyre, and force the Faceless Void out to provide area denial, and also use the Ice Path to try to catch him out. You could easily dodge the Ice Path, but the Macro Pyre will at least will have to force him to run around and try to find another spot. So you're buying whatever hero is caught in the Chronosphere enough time to try to survive. Venomancer as the other support pickup with the Witch Doctor. Incredibly powerful support duo, because Paralyzing Cask has a very long range and is fairly reliable, but the only drawback is because it has such a slow projectile speed, by the time it hits them, they've already made it a fair amount of distance back, and so Venomancer is able to mitigate this, since you could either initiate the gank with the Venomancer Gale, in which case they're not going to make any distance before the cask hits them, or you cast them and then you have an instant Gale flying out, so they're not able to clear much distance. And so we're going to Slark pick up from Momentum Dota, so we're going to be seeing a Faceless Void off lane with a Slark tray lane and a Tinker mid. You can also switch it up. Slark isn't too bad on the off lane as well. But they've picked up a Shadow Fiend over for TAGC that I highly disagree with. Shadow Fiend is an incredibly greedy mid lane here, since you need an excellent Shadow Fiend play to begin with, and then you have to ensure that he has a good start. And so that means that you have to invest a lot of resources from your support here players in order to keep him active and relevant in the game. So a lot of teams, when they do pick up the Shadow Fiend, they go to extraordinary lengths to make sure that he's able to get those early souls up so he can start to CS on his own. So one of the things that teams like to do is if they'll pick up a Venomancer if they're the dire side. Venomancer will skill ward at 1, and Shadow Fiend will run up to the Roshan pit. Venomancer will drop the ward down in front of Roshan. Roshan will hit the ward and the Shadow Fiend denies it, so he's able to find his souls that way. Another way is if you've got a hero like an Earthshaker, it's got a huge initiation range. You have them sit mid. You just have the Earthshaker sit mid, threatening the enemy mid hero. The enemy mid hero knows that the Earthshaker is there, so he has to play very defensively, because if he runs forward, the Earthshaker could fissure block him in across the ramp, and then you could go for a kill attempt there. Otherwise, if the mid player is playing very defensively, Shadow Fiend gets a complete wave of experience and a complete wave of souls to himself. And once he's got enough souls, he can stay on his own and find his farm. But in this particular case, when there's no investment coming out, he actually chose to spend a lot of gold on regen. You usually want to start with Wraithband and as much stats as possible and have your supports pull you tangos, just because you have such a difficult time at level 1 when you've got 0 souls, that you want to make it as painless as possible. We're going to introduce players from both teams over in TAGC. Mirana's Llama, going to be the offline Nyx Assassin, safety ward up on him, as well as the South Shield. Shadow Fiend, once again, doubting his question as a build order, since he chose to start with a Salve as well as Tango, so that's regen that his supports could have bought for him. So you want to make sure that you have as much damage as possible to get that early CS. T-Dubs, who was on the offlane Doom, he's been kicked out. Now he's been replaced over in that 4 position role as the Disruptor. Thunderstrike up at 1, so choosing the skill once again before you see a lane. Very questionable decision making coming from TAGC. Kajani, once again, going to be the carry player over in the Juggernaut this time. With Juggernaut, you pretty much always have to scale spin at 1, so that's fairly self-explanatory. Meat Shield, once again, going to be on the Jakiro. So that 5 position role. Over for the boys in Momentum Dota, iPro87 going to be the 5 position Venomancer. Jesus on the Goonsack going to be the 4 position Witch Dog to chose to scale Cask at 1. Venomancer, you probably want to skill Gale at 1 most of the time. Let's Get It, going to be the mid lane player over the Tinker, and he's been pulled 3 tangos. Starting with Null Talisman, also has a Salve just in case. Pawn Town going to be the offlane Slark, so we're seeing at 1 position Void and an offlane Slark. Slark works in the offlane the same way that the Faceless Void does. If you're against a soft offlane, soft tri-lane that doesn't have a lot of killing power, just off the back of your Pounce or your Time Walk, you can keep yourself alive and prevent any gank attempts from happening. But Slark works a lot better as a safe lane farm because he's a snowball hero. Void can find recovery, since the instant he hits level 6 he can go for a solo kill using the Chronosphere. Whereas Slark, he can go for that, but that relies on the enemy team playing up more than you playing well. So you never want to account for the enemy team making mistakes, you want to account for your performance being superior to theirs. So you want to have a well executed plan as opposed to waiting on the enemy team to make a mistake. And it looks like, yeah, it is a tri-lane, never mind. The supports are going to be heading over to the top lane, but they're camping out the rune. Probably going for a level 1 gank attempt over in the Shadow Fiend. We see this happening. iPro87. So Gale into Cask, or Cask into Gale, either or is enough to ensure the kill on Smile Freak. The Smile Freak playing very defensively. He knows something's not quite right because there's currently 3 solo lanes. GS Donkey, going to be on the Faceless Void. Up against Mirana's Llama, he should be having a very easy lane. And they can always choose to rotate over to the top lane, but that water has spotted them out. So Smile Freak playing it much more defensively this time. He's seen that movie before where he plays a bit too far forward. He knows what the spoilers are, and this time he's learned his lesson. Playing very defensively, 0 souls up on him. So once again, going back into the questionable decision making coming out from TAGC, he eats a laser every time he goes for a CS as well. Tinker's a very powerful 1v1 hero to begin with. You don't want to give him an easy lane, since he's a hero that once he gets his boots of travels and Blink Dagger, you can't kill him if he's playing well. So you want to make it as painful for him as possible to be able to get the level 6, be able to get the rearm, to be able to get the boots of travel. So you want a hero like Puck that has enough base damage that he can threaten. He's got 600 range, so Tinker can't laser him every time he goes in for a CS. And he's got enough base damage that he can out-CS the Tinker and go for a kill attempt. And while he's talking about kill attempt, T-Dubs, he's being pinged out by iPro87. They want to go for a kill attempt since Disruptor's Thunderstrike at 1. It's good if you're against one hero, but when you're against more than one hero, it becomes completely useless. And while he's staying in the mid lane, I look away and Let's Get It's able to get a kill. 2 points up in the laser, 1 point up in the missile, so it could be going for a very active build, since otherwise you go for 2 points in the laser and then you want to go for two points in the march. Could have been a value level up where you use it just to be able to get that kill, in which case it's more than worthwhile. But with 3 points already invested into killing abilities, probably could be choosing to go for the old school Tinker build where you max out the laser and the rocket. Or the hybrid build now where you go for 3 points in the laser and 3 points in the march, then 2 points in... 3 points in laser, 3 points in the missile, then 2 points in the march machines. So at level 9 when you have to rearm, you've got enough points in the march machines to be able to go for that farming build, but you also have enough killing power off the back of your laser and your rocket to be able to rotate around and go for kills. So it'll be interesting to see what he chooses to skill up with. He's level 5 now, so he's got 2 unspent skill points. Choosing to max out the laser, so yeah, he's definitely going for that ganking build then. Still holding on to 1 skill point. Actually, he chose to level stats. Am I seeing this right? No, that's not stats. It's the Wraith Bat. That's the Null Talisman. Never mind. So he's holding on to his other skill point. Very interesting build coming out from the Tinker. You usually, if you are going for that killing build, you usually just max it out. But that laser, 240 pure damage coming out from it. Smile Freak, that's about a third of his life every time he walks in. And top lane, Jason the Goonsack actually killed off by a Disruptor. So Thunderstrike doing a lot of work. At least in being able to set up that kill. Most likely will be maxing out the Glimpse. Because level 1 Glimpse is completely useless, because the range is so slow and your hero is so slow that you're not going to be able to get it off effectively. Portelling to get a very easy pounce over a meat shield, dodges the ice path. It's a good trade for him. Looks like having a lot of internet issues. Actually going to close the stream over my end. It always seems to be helping out. There we go. And the mid lane, Shadow Fiend's been completely driven out, forced back to the fountain, and in the early stage of the game, in the laning phase, it's actually more detrimental than a kill. Of course, the advantage of this is you're not at least feeding gold into the enemy team, but in terms of the amount of EXP and gold you lose, as just as detrimental as actually killing them. So choosing to go for 2 points in the missile, then going for a point in the march. So he's going for that hybrid build. He wants a few points in the march, because march at 1 isn't a 1.1, you need a fair amount of points for it to be effective. iPro 87 hiding the tree line, waiting for Smile Freak to show himself, so he could go for a Gale attempt. But Tinker's no longer there. He went to pick up the regen rune in the top lane. And GS Donkey, 3 points up in the time lock, so he's going for a very standard build in the Faceless Void. Time lock does a massive amount of damage in the Chronosphere, so 140 every time it procs with a level 4 time lock, and since the magic damage as well, in the early stages of the game, it completely tears through the enemy team. That's the reason why BKB is actually a fairly effective item against the Void, even if he can still disable you through the Chrono in terms of his solo killing power in the early stage. At the early and mid stage of the game, where he's relying mostly on attack speed and the time lock damage, it does mitigate a fair amount of his damage. But that being said, you don't want to be hit by the Chrono in the first place. Smile Freak, caught out with the Gallagher, they can choose to dive this, especially with the laser online. Never mind, laser was used to find CS earlier, so Smile Freak lives, and let's get it. Misplay coming up from him, that was an easy kill they had on the Shadow Fiend, and the Shadow Fiend only 8 CS up on him. Has been a complete wash. Since your mid lane here, you never want to account for your mid lane to fall apart. You always want to ensure that you either break even or you win. There's no middle ground. You never want to ensure that you never want to prepare for a mid lane losing, since that's detrimental to your team in terms of what you can do. And iPro 87 actually feeds his life away. It's an easy race for Smile Freak, ensures that kill, with the rotation coming in from the Disruptor. Disruptor also had Glimpse. Of course, he wasn't in Glimpse already, unfortunately. He's only got 1 point up in it, but with a point in the Connect Field and the Thunderstrike, doing a lot of chip damage. Connect Field being used on Let's Get It, but Let's Get It can actually do a lot of damage. It could actually perhaps go for a kill attempt once the spells go off cooldown. So he backs away, but the Thunderstrike does do a lot of damage. It's a very efficient 1 point nuke. But the only drawback is it doesn't provide you much burst damage since it's applied over 4 ticks. And so it's the reason why in a try-v-try situation, the Disruptor isn't really effective aggressively unless you have another aggressive support hero to pair him up with, in which case he can maximize the power of the Glimpse to either pull him back, if it helps set up kills for everybody else. iPro 87 eats the Ice Path and the Liquid Fire, and this Slark tri-lane has been off to a fairly good start. Slark actually chose not to go for a point in the Essence Aura, and the Essence Shift. Gale catches on 1. Kajani turned around the spin. He's actually able to drive up Pawn at least go for a kill attempt. But Malediction's over on Meat Shield. One more right click, that should be enough damage to be able to bring him down. Healing Ward's been deployed, so that will actually keep him alive. So good recognition coming up from the Juggernaut. Choosing to go for a point over in the Healing Ward as opposed to a point in the crit or just maxing out the stats. But point up in the stats and point up in the Healing Ward. Fairly standard Juggernaut build. A point in the stats ensures that you can use your spin into your Omni Slash, so you can find a solo kill at level 6. And the Healing Ward, you want to max that out as soon as possible, or at least get 2-3 points up in it so you can go for pushes. And the sheer amount of utility it gives you. Faceless Void could actually go for a solo kill on T-Dubs or Mirana's Llama. If he actually catches them out in both, he'll be able to kill off Mirana's Llama and turn around and do a lot of chip damage on T-Dubs, and actually could potentially go for another kill since he's out of mana. So GS Donkey, T-Dubs is playing way too far forward, especially considering he's got no mana. GS Donkey, if he knows this, if he's checking his mana pool, he can easily go for a kill attempt, but let's get it, runs a 2-man Chronosphere, and that's going to be a double kill in favor of Momentum Dota. As Mirana's Llama actually forced to use Vendetta, he's able to get the carry pace off, and that keeps himself alive just barely. Let's get it! Gotta be very careful, he was called out by the Impale, would have been a death. But he turns around for one more right click, unfortunately wasn't enough. And that was a fruitless Chronosphere. Very surprising, looks like the RNG gods weren't in GS Donkey's favour, since if he was able to get one more time lock proc, that would be kill time, but he can go on T-Dubs. T-Dubs is playing way too far forward once again. I'm noticing this trend, and he takes a fall, feeds a free death over to the 3 position Faceless Void. When you always want to be checking the enemy hero's mana, since if they're in a situation like that where he didn't have mana, you just walk in and go for a free kill. If he had mana for a glimpse, Void wouldn't be able to play that aggressively, since he knows that if he walks forward, he'll immediately get glimpse back. But with the fact that T-Dubs has no mana and he then chooses to reveal himself and play more aggressively, questionable decision making coming out from TAGC. Juggernaut has phase boots up, so he's got a fair amount of solo killing power, but against the Slark, Slark can simply pounce himself away and use the Dark Pack to purge off Meat Shield's Ice Path if it catches, since Ice Path has such a long wind-up time, since Jakiro has an incredibly long cast point and very slow turn rate. iPro87 dodges one Gale, eats the other one, the Thunderstrike brings him down though. He's playing too far forward on his own, especially considering the fact there's a ward there. I guess he wanted to get the stack off for the Tinker. No ancient stacking going on for him so far. He's winning the mid lane, but considering the fact that he's actually choosing to max out the March now, so very unusual build coming out from the Tinker. But the 3 points in the laser hurts like hell. So Smile Freak has to be very careful. It takes out a good chunk of his life. 240 pure damage that's unmitigated by the magic resistance. And so it's a third of his life gone just from one spell. And he can continue to spam that out as well, especially with the Soul Ring and the bottle. T-Dub spots him out with the ward. Interrupts the stack by running himself forward. If that spot out by the Tinker, that would have been another death for him. But T-Dubs looks like he's the one that's actually got 2/3 of their kills. And Rana's Llama, he blew Vendetta level 1 to keep himself alive. But he's got it up now, but he has to start rotating and making space for the rest of his team. He can't stay in lane he can't compete against the Void in terms of last hits, because the Void's got far superior base damage. He's got the time lock procs to rely upon as well, and he's got the superior base damage and the animation. Disruptor, too far forward once again. Smile Freak as well, choosing to dive behind the tail 1 as a Shadow Fiend, and then he feeds a double kill to the Tinker, and Tinker, 250 gold away from the boot to travel, so he's off to an absolutely fantastic start. Kajani using Blade Spin, fruitlessly against Pawn Town, can simply just pounce himself away. Very interesting to note that he chose not to go for a point in the Essence Shift. You always want 1 point in the Essence Shift because it gives you more DPS in the secondary point over in the Dark Pact, or the secondary point over in the Pounce. That's because every time you hit them, you're reducing the effective HP pool by 19, so you're stealing away 1 point in strength. And if you get a few points of hits in, you're also increasing your damage as well. GS Donkey could actually be taking a fall right now. The Vendetta being committed, but that was unfortunately backtracked. Faceless Void, he's got Time Walk around as well. iPro87 goes in for the turnaround. Doesn't have enough. He actually chose to go for a second point in the Poison Gale. Poison Gale's ability that you always want to keep at 1, since your other abilities scale so much better. Since Poison Gale, the only reason why you have the ability at all is for the snare. The damage is just a bonus, but you get more damage from more points in Poison Sting. Since the Poison Sting lasts longer, ticks faster as well, and then propagates to your wards. So inefficient build order coming out from the Venomancer, but while I say that, in the top lane, Jesus on the Goonsack and Pawn Down, they spot out Meat Shield, and Meat Shield, he won't be able to dodge the pounce, even though if he gets off the Ice Path, it's immediately purged off by the Dark Pack. Cast bounces on too. Kajani ran into that, even though he doesn't have enough for the Omni Slash. So I don't know what the hell he was doing running forward, especially since the Slark doesn't give a damn about his Blade Fury. But Jesus on the Goonsack gets raised down, W raised into the E raise. Smile Freak choosing to dive up against Pawn Town. Pawn Town actually will be taking a fall. He could actually choose to Tread Switch and try to keep himself alive, but the pounce was on cooldown. Smile Freak is able to get a recovery kill. So finally able to find some form of recovery, especially considering how badly he's done over in the mid lane. 27 CS up on him compared to 51 on the Tinker and 60 on the Void. Void's also got 21 deny, so he knows that when you're in that 1v1 position role, going 1v1 against the enemy offlaner that's dependent on the EXP, denies are just as important as last hits. In fact, in the early stages of the lane, denies are actually more important than last hits. Since being able to hit level 2, level 3 faster than them gives you a lot more killing power, a lot more lane control. But iPro87, he's been giving a lot of farm priority now just to be able to pick up his Poison Nova. Since with the Chronosphere, the Poison Nova, and the Witch Doctor Death Ward, they could win any fight they choose to engage on. Even if they only catch a Chronosphere on 1, the fact that they could instantly kill that one hero off the back of their abilities means that they can do a lot of work. But Slark is a bit of an interesting pickup with the Void, because you never want to pick up another melee carry with the Void unless it's Ember Spirit, and that's because the Ember Spirit's got the Slate of Fist. But even then, that's not the best combo because the Ember Spirit needs a lot of space, and so unless you've gotten the rest of your lineup being very powerful in the mid game, so you can try to hold the line while the Ember Spirit finds his farm, not really going to be all too effective of a draft. But Slark with the Void means that every time Void initiates with the Chronosphere, Slark can't do anything to any of the heroes caught in the Chronosphere. He has to navigate around the Chronosphere. Since if he chooses to go in for right clicks, since he's a melee hero, unless the Faceless Void gets some amazing go super Chronospheres where he just barely catches them out on the edge, so Slark can still melee them. But that's something that you never want to rely upon because it's too difficult. You can't expect that much from your voice play. Goes in for I-7, catches a poison over on 2. Mask of Mana's being popped by GS Donkey. Morale's Llama misses a point blank impale over an I-7 who wasn't even moving. And that forces the 2 heroes back. If they decided to commit for that, they would have actually at least traded 1 for 1. But the Venomancer, he needs more points up in the wards. That second point in the Poison Gale doesn't offer him anything at this point, so the damage it provides is fairly negligible compared to the damage you get from Sting or the utility you get from an extra point over in the ward. But all in all, he's doing not too bad as well, despite the fact he's had 2 deaths. He did throw his life away with both attempts in the mid lane, moving too far forward and being caught out in the Ancients when it was warded. So some questionable plays coming up from Momentum Dota as well as TAGC. But Jason the Goonsack, he's been picking up slack. He's also got 2 deaths to his name as well. Was able to set up a good kill over a Meat Shield, but fed the Shadow Fiend. So Shadow Fiend, he's doing his best to try to recover, but against this lineup, he's going to be forced to go for a BKB, since otherwise Tinker will be able to blow him up. Venomancer can blow him up with the Gale and the Nova. And when Shadow Fiend's forced to go for a BKB as his first big item, especially since he's been as delayed as he is, by the time he picks it up, the cores in the enemy team will have an item advantage on you, and so it'll make it even more difficult. And so even if you do get the BKB up, they could simply just right click you down. They don't really have to give a damn about the damage that you bring out because they'll be able to out DPS you or outlast you. So it will be interesting to see which hero is going to be building that mechanism for their team. Probably going to be one of the support heroes. Smile Freak, cast lands on him. Gale unfortunately whiffs. Let's Get It can actually choose to dive this if he really wants to, but Invis Room be deployed by Smile Freak, and so that helps him stay alive in the bottom lane. Miranda's Llama, you can't stay alone against a Faceless Void if he's got his ultimate up, especially once he has the Mask of Madness. I mean, even when he's level 6, level 7, you can't stay in lane against him, since he could just Chronosphere you and right-click you down with the Time Lock procs. But with the Mask of Madness as well, questionable plays coming from him. In the top lane, Jakiro gets blown up by Tinker, is able to clean up with the heat-seeking missile. T-Dubs as well taking it forward. Kajani can't do anything, he doesn't have enough mana to be able to use his Omni Slash, so he couldn't even turn it around, but even if he tried to, 3 heroes there, so hopefully the bounce will be able to split to 1. The slashes will split to 1, they'll keep him alive, and Tinker picks up his Blink Dagger. So he's reached that point where you can no longer gank the Tinker if he's playing, well, assuming that he's playing properly. If he does misplay, doesn't blink out in time, if he doesn't shift you properly, or if he blinks to a very obvious spot, you can still go for a kill attempt, but it's incredibly difficult for that to happen. Now that he's got a Blink Tag as well, he's got enough killing power to be able to kill off Smile Free, but TP Sport's coming in, so he should actually be backing away right now, playing very far forward. T-Dubs, unfortunately, probably the last hero that you want to come in, since Static Storm was on cooldown. He's got the Glimpse, so he can actually choose to glimpse him back, and that's going to be a kill over on the Tinker if the Shadow Fiend can get there in time. Smile Freak running over, but T-Dubs on his own doesn't do enough damage, and Let's Get It just walks away. Then unfortunately, they could have had a chance for a recovery kill there. Kajani running very far forward because he's got the Omni Slash, but now he's caught out. He ran way too far forward, especially considering the fact there's a tri-lane there. Split, his Omni Slash completely bounces. I-7 doesn't give a damn since he didn't die to that, and Ponetown, he had the Shadow Dance. Liquid Fire completely whiffing from Meat Shield. And Shadow Dance was blown in exchange for the Omni Slash, so the Juggernaut, who's a momentum-based hero, isn't able to get the ball rolling, especially since he's behind on CS. Void is 3 times the amount of CS he does. Let's Get It can actually go for a kill attempt over a Meat Shield if he really wants to. Faces Void in the mid lane. With every time the Chronosphere is up, is able to find a kill, especially over on squishy heroes such as Disruptor. Malediction being used, Missile, Laser, they can leave him alone, he'll die from the dot damage, but choose to commit, and then we should be able to take the tower off the back of that. Let's Get It. Decides to TP back before he marches and rearms. It's a little bit sloppy coming up from him. You want to be as efficient as possible with your rotations as the Tinker. Could have at least thrown out a march before he went to help push up the wave, but it looks like Jason the Goonsack goes back. Pulls the creep wave forward. Small Free eats another missile to the face. He's going towards the BKB, but by the time he has it, the game will already be too far out of TAGC's hands to be to recover. 7,500 gold lead in their hands, 7,500 EXP as well. Jakiro's level 7, but chose to max out Liquid Fire. When your Jakiro's maxing out Liquid Fire, it's a very standard build, but you have to be making something with the Liquid Fire. You have to be taking towers, you have to be harassing out their offlaner, or if you Clash and try like this, you want to be keeping them so low that they can't go for a kill attempt, since otherwise you could have just maxed out the Ice Path and at least had the defensive capability, or if you maxed out the Liquid Fire, you'd have the offensive capability as well. If you max out the Liquid Fire and you're playing from behind, it doesn't really offer you anything. Since they could, if you run in and throw a Liquid Fire, the enemy team says, okay, GS Donkey leaps and bashes your face in with Mom Spaghetti. Mirana's Llama been whipping all those impales as well. If he had been able to latch one of them earlier on the Tinker when he dove tier 1, would have been a kill up on him. None of his Vendetta ganks have been fruitful, even when he point blank Vendetta and tried to go for right click over in the Faceless Void. Ate the backtrack. Macropie being deployed doesn't really do all too much. It does scare them back. But Meat Shield taking a fair amount of damage in exchange for that. He eats 2 rockets as well as the Gale. Shadow Fiend's there with the Illusion Rune, so all 5 heroes from TAGC grouping up in the bottom lane. Illusion scouting out. Kajani's there, he's got the Omni Slash, but that's a level 1 Omni Slash, and you're fighting in the March. Mirana's Llama runs into the March and dies. No idea what the hell he was doing there. Kajani as well, also running into the March. It does damage, it doesn't have candy. Stop eating it like it was candy. Run the hell away from it, don't run into it. T-Dubs backing away as Tinker BOTing in. Small Freak was there as well, they were to help him try to recover. They should be backing the hell away right now. They've really lost 2, they know the Tinker coming at any time. Poison Gale unfortunately misses. So off that misplay, Small Freak should be able to make it out, but then again, GS Donkey comes from the side, Chronosphere committed for this, is able to smack him down, the Suicide Requiem almost kills him. There's a fair amount of damage. Meat Shield turns around, they should be running away instead of turning back. TAGC, incredibly questionable plays coming out from them. T-Dubs drops the Tag Storm a lot, but let's get it, just right click him down. He says thank you for the glimpse, he glimpsed me out of your own spell. And in the top lane, Jesus on the Goon Sack and Ponytown are able to tag a tower with no contention at all, considering all 5 heroes on the bottom lane, and then once the heroes died, they chose to stay there. If you're ever in that situation where heroes are picked off and you know that the enemy team has 3 or 4 heroes in the bottom lane, you run the hell the other way. The instant you take a casualty, you don't stay there because you can't fight them. They have the numbers advantage, they have the spell advantage, as well as the EXP and gold. You don't want to give them any more kills, you immediately run the hell away. Same thing with the March. Unless a Nyx Assassin can see the Tinker right in front of him, can run and briefly into the March using the Spike Carry Pace and then using the Impel to get a quick kill attempt. You don't want to fight in March, you don't want to go anywhere near the March. And you sure as hell don't want to Vendetta through the March, especially when you can't see the Tinker. Shadowblade up on the Slark, very, very late Shadowblade, all things considered. Considering the fact that he hasn't really been contested all too much, could have been up 2 minutes earlier, but that being said, 19.5 minutes, not too bad. Shadowblade's an item as a rule of thumb, you want to get it by the 20-22 minute mark. iPro87 runs forward with the Poison Nova, eats the Omni Slash to the face. Omni Slash with only 3 bounces doesn't really do anything. Kajani's going to be throwing his life away. Blade spinning, Impale catches this time, he's finally able to latch one. Manabun as well. Pawntown, Shadow Dance is being deployed, so he's able to keep himself alive off that. And then once Shadow Blade, iPro87 takes the fall, but he's able to kill the Juggernaut off the back of the Poison Gale as well as the Poison Sting dot damage. Meat Shield actually could be, yeah, he's going to turn around the bomb. Pawntown, he doesn't have the Dark Pact, like, he can still turn around Mirana's Llama. Mirana's Llama uses the Carapace, very late Carapace coming out from him, and then GS Donkey comes in, smacks him down. So just as a demoralizing factor, he leaps him for that one last right click. So standard Faceless Void contribution to a gank. G on the Goonsack misses a CS. Spots out T-Dubs, can actually go for a solo kill. No idea what the hell T-Dubs is doing. He keeps playing too far aggressively when he knows his teammates are dead and when the enemy are there. That's misplays on misplays. And that's actually a tier 2 tower they're going to lose off the back of that. Tinker over in the bottom lane is actually split pushing the tier 2. It's a very aggressive wall being placed by the Dire side. Let's not offering you anything considering the fact you're playing this far behind. Even if you could spot out rotations, it's not really going to help you at all when you're playing this far forward. Kajani trying to find some CS. He hasn't picked up a single item ever since his phase boot, so his items haven't progressed in about 10 minutes. Tinker has his Dagon 3. Shadow Fiend, he's not going to get his BKB before the game's over. Or if he does get it, he'll instantly be blown up and Tinker leaps forward and laser Dagons him, especially with the missile follow-up. Even if he does get it, the Faceless Void doesn't give a damn. He'll smack you around with the sheer amount of right-click damage he's doing while you are blocking the time lock dagger. Because you're so squishy, because he's got one item advantage on you, especially since you went Maelstrom into the Chrysalis. You usually go for one or the other. So you want to stack attack speed on him. So Chrysalis, you usually don't really see it on the Faceless Void this early on. You usually want to go for a Mjolnir or the Aghanim Scepter as your first real big item, unless you're going for the BKB. But in this game, I guess he's playing a bit cocky because he knows he doesn't necessarily need it. He hasn't needed it so far, so why should he really need it now? Mirana's Llama turns around, lands another Impale this time, but GS Donkey could choose to commit to this if he really wants to. We've got a backstab happening over in the mid lane as Kajani uses the Blade Spin for no reason, even though the enemy team is missing. Pawntown with the Shadow Blade, catches out Smile Freak, T-Dub's caught out with the Paralyzing Cast, drops Static Storm. Macropie over an iPro87, so iPro87's going to be a sacrificial lab. Suicide Requiem kills him off. T-Dubs gets to the Glimpse Sack on Jesus and the Goonsack, so he takes the fall as well. He's able to get trade 2 for 2 so far. Meat Shield, yeah, he's stabbed up at Pawntown. He's going to be taking a fall, especially with the pouts available. So So 3 for 2 and a triple kill over on the Slark. He's now starting to snowball and Faceless for in the bottom lane. He wasn't even present. He smacks down the tier 2. He's got his Mjolnir up now, so he's got the Hammer of Thor. Kajani running forward once again. So very far out of position. He could actually spin and TP back home. Chose not to do so and instead gets blown up by the Tinker. So incredibly questionable plays coming out from TAGC. They've had multiple opportunities to be able to clean up their act. But unfortunately, misplays on misplays. And Momentum Dota, they didn't even prepare for the mistakes, but now that they're getting them, they're more than happy to take them. You want to build your strategy around your team and execute your draft effectively. If the enemy team decides to make mistakes as well and make it easier for you, then more power for you. Tinker with a level 4 Dagon. He's reached the point of critical mass. If he catches any hero out, he could kill them or drop them to low enough that the rest of his team can bring them down. Hometown, Cranium Basher up on him. Usually not a big fan of the item on the Slark until he picks up a few of them. But while I say that in the top lane, let's get it. Instantly blows up the Tinker. Just because Slark, you need attack speed before you become effective. But when you're level 14, when you've got the Shadow Blade as well, the Cranium Basher actually makes a lot of sense because you've got enough attack speed for it to work now. But you want to build it after you build another attack speed item. So in this case, the Shadow Blade fits the bill since it gives him 30 attack speed as well as the 30 damage. Well, 22 damage, I think it was enough. Yeah, there we go. So Pontown, eating the Thunder Strike, gets glimpsed back, but there's no static storm to follow up, so he just pounces himself out immediately. T-dubs, very questionable decision making coming up from him. Kajani as well, looks like he's actually going towards what looks like the workings of a Battle Fury. He could be going towards a Shadow Blade as well, but either item is completely terrible in this particular game. Battle Fury on Juggernaut, not really the best item on him since he's a momentum-based carry. You want to pick up items that give you a lot of immediate mid-game impact so you can win the mid-game and then before the game goes late. So the Shadow Blade can give you that if you pick it up very early on. But the Battle Fury, it's a farming item. You don't pick up a Battle Fury and say, hey, we can fight now. You pick up a Battle Fury and say, okay, see you guys in 10 minutes. Missile flies through. Meat Shield, he's actually going to die to the march. I have no words for this. We're so far into the trench, we might actually be in the Marianas. I think we need pressure suits to stay alive in this kind of atmosphere. GS Donkey gets 2 kills. Johnny as well, he's going to run around and then get killed off by the Death Ward. And there's no way they can recover, TAGC can recover off the back of this, especially when Momentum Dota this far ahead. 25,000 gold lead and 25,000 EXP lead. This is the single biggest golden EXP advantage that I've seen so far in the ODL2, and I think even the ODL1, the highest golden EXP lead was 20k. So 25,000. Things are looking incredibly grim. And I don't think TAGC can recover from this. I mean, as a caster, you never want to say that a game is over until the Ancient actually blows up, or they call GG, but in this particular game, when you're this far ahead in the lineup that relies on snowballing the mid-game, Pontown, using the Showdowns to keep himself alive, should be able to do so. When you're this far behind on a momentum-based lineup that relies on you getting ahead and staying ahead, things are looking pretty grim. So on a scale of 1 to grim, pretty damn grim. Pontown, Shadow Blade's off cooldown now, so he's fine. He's going to regen himself up and then re-engage if he chooses to do so. Mirana's Llama, Vendetta, first actual Vendetta gank, but we'll see if it's too little too late at this point. GS Donkey doesn't even need the Chronosphere, it's not even on cooldown. Poison Nova catches onto T-dubs, being smacked around silly. GS Donkey actually could be taking a fall. Never mind, he stands his ground, smacks him down, using the Mask of Madness as a lifesteal. T-dubs, Pontown just blows out. Cheeky right click, never mind, he's not even going to be able to land it. He's forced out. He's got the Shadow Blade in case to destroy the fatal hits that would have been flying out. Shadow Fiend buys back and then dies. A little bit of smackdown coming out from TAGC. So long as you're having fun, all's fair in love and Dota. Faces forward, going towards the Daedalus. So the reason why you usually don't want to go for Chrysalis and then the Maelstrom is the Maelstrom will override everything else. And so you never want to build any other PRD or RNG abilities with the Faceless Void. The exception, I guess, is the Cranium Basher, but Faceless Void doesn't need it. But that being said, the damage sure as hell does hurt, since the Mjolnir gives you a huge amount of attack speed. So for the Faceless Void, you don't necessarily need to build damage early on. You can if you really want to, but since you get all your damage from your time lock, you just want to stack as much attack speed as possible so you can kill them in the Chronosphere. That's the only objective as Faceless Void. Get a Chrono, land a Chrono, kill a hero in a Chrono, and you've pretty much done your job. You don't have to necessarily land these huge Chronos. But while I say that, Pontown going 1v3, he's got Shadow Blade, Healing Wall trying to do doing a bit of work and keeping Mirana's Llama alive. He actually runs it forward, so miss micro coming up from him, and then they're cleaned up in the back line. Let's get it, instantly kills the Shadow Fiend. He's almost got his E-Blade up as well. And GS Donkey, an incredibly impressive play coming out from him. 8-0 for 9, so no deaths at all. And the offlane up against the Nyx Assassin was able to completely outclass him. T-Dubs once again too far forward. Dagon not even being used, so Tinker lets him go. That's a freebie. GS Donkey says, no, I want that. Tinker decides to change his mind. Blinks forward, blows him up in the face. And GG well played being called. So 27 minutes in, Momentum Dota 2-0 TAGC. It's with some incredibly questionable decision making coming out from them. I mean, I said this before at the end of game 1. Dota's a game where the team that makes the least amount of mistakes wins. And that's really been showcased with both these games. I just don't even have any words anymore. Moran's Llama caught up with the Abyssal Blade, so Slark is obscenely fed. T-Dubs instantly dies. They're just fountain farming at this point. We've degenerated into pubs, and even then, I'm sure pubs aren't this stompy. So that looks like it. I will now be casting Sing 2 up against Eastnug. I think I should be able to catch the latter half of game 1, or if not, game 2. So stay tuned for more Dota. I'm just going to quickly restart the stream. We'll be right back.